Again, hi everyone. My name is Joy Velarde, and I'm the Outreach and Recruitment Coordinator for the Mechanical Engineering Department. I was undergraduate academic advisor for about 6 years and recently transitioned into this new role. So I do graduate and undergraduate recruiting, and recently kind of took on the role as BSMS advisor because we didn't really have anyone promoting the program and there was a lot of confusion about how the program works. So I'm trying to clear that up for everyone and get more students involved. So first, you might be wondering if it's worth it to do a master's degree. So just financially speaking, here's a little breakdown of starting salaries if you just have a Bachelor of Science versus a master's or a PhD. So you can see right off the bat, the average salary is around $5,000 higher if you start with a master's degree. I also think that advancement opportunities may come quicker to you. All things being equal, someone with a master's degree might stand out over another applicant. And then, of course, PhD is a little bit longer time in school, but it also has a higher financial starting salary as well. So what is a BSMS degree? It's an accelerated program where you can earn your master's degree in 1 additional year after completing your bachelor's degree requirements. Both of the degrees are awarded at the same time, so you go about a year without having any degree at all, even though you've completed your undergraduate requirements, and then you apply for graduation for both in the same semester. You also save 6 credits because we're going to use 2 of your 4 required technical electives towards your master's degree, so it can save you time and money. We have 2 options for the BSMS. Similar to our regular master's degree, thesis or non-thesis masters. With the thesis masters, you need to be doing research and you write and defend the thesis, which is like a long research paper basically. There's less actual coursework, but both degrees are 30 credits. You're just taking some research hours during the time you're focusing on your research, so less actual classes. And the non-thesis masters is just 30 credits of classes, and you don't need to do research or write a thesis or take an exam or anything like that. So like I said, with the thesis option, it's research oriented. So you'll work directly with a faculty member, which we might refer to as your faculty advisor. This is typically geared towards students that want to eventually get a PhD or maybe work in a research-oriented position, like at a national laboratory or something like that. There's like Sandia National Labs, NASA hires PhD researchers, a lot of government agencies. So you would take 21 credits of formal coursework, about 7 3-credit classes, and then 9 credit hours of the course that's just titled MS Thesis Research. You need to get started on your research fairly early because a normal master's degree is 2 years and you're trying to cram all these classes and research and writing thesis into 1 additional year. So it's best if you can start doing research by the end of your junior year or even earlier if possible. So any of you sophomores, it's not too early to start thinking about this program. Go ahead and contact faculty and try and get involved with research as early as you can. I know I reached out to some seniors. If you're in that boat, it's still possible for you to do thesis masters, but it may take you up to 2 years to complete the master's portion if you haven't done any research yet. And then kind of the ideal time frame is beginning of junior year, start or by the end of junior year. The non-thesis option, you're going to use 6 credits you took as an undergrad, and then you'll need 21 additional credits. Sorry, 24 additional credits. So it's about 10 total 3-credit classes. And this version is designed to give you more of an in-depth educational experience, maybe in a more specific area of interest. Like maybe there were technical electives you wanted to take as an undergrad, but you just don't have the time or space because you can only choose 4. So it'll just give you more breadth in these more advanced areas. And it's also 30 credits, as I said. So the preferred timeline for the Thesis Masters would be that you apply or get screened for our program in your junior year. I use the words on-cycle and off-cycle in this slide, typically referring to an on-cycle student that started in a fall semester and is continuing on the flow chart in like a fall spring pattern. that line up with the fall spring on the flowchart. Off cycle being you started in the spring or got a little off track and now you're on kind of a spring fall pattern. For the program, we typically require the GRE exam. This year it's waived due to COVID. It's likely going to be required in the future, but a lot of schools are going test optional, so I'm not really sure. So just check with me in the future. But if you're a junior, we won't know because you'll be applying during your senior year. We'll need to find out for that semester if it'll be required. But anyway, you can take your GRE exam during the junior year, or if you're senior, you can take it during your senior year. And you want to get about an 80th percentile on the quantitative portion. And then you want to work on finding a faculty advisor because you can't really be admitted to a Thesis Masters without a faculty that's willing to work with you and supervise your research. Then we have this pre-screening application form. Since we can't formally admit you to the graduate school itself, we're just screening you to tell you, yes, you're qualified and eligible to proceed in the BSMS program and taking those technical electives at the graduate level. And you want to do that around March 15th or October 15th, depending if you're on cycle, it'll be in your second semester junior year, or if you're kind of off cycle, that semester may be in the fall. And we'll basically just say, yes, your GPA is high enough, you can go ahead and continue as if you're in the program, but it's contingent on being admitted to the graduate school. And like I mentioned, trying to get involved with research during your junior year. Some faculty think that even is already too late, so they like you to start thinking about it sophomore year. And then during your senior year, you'll continue working in a research lab on research for your thesis, and you'll take 2 technical electives at the graduate level out of the 4 required for your bachelor's degree. And we'll ask you to submit a program declaration form just to verify, yes, I am going to continue and apply to the graduate school, because a lot of people express interest or fill out that pre-screening form and then they don't actually apply. So you just want to get an idea of who's actually going to apply. And then you'll apply to the graduate school during your second semester of senior year. And the deadlines for that is April 1st for a fall admission or November 1st for a spring admission. For the non-thesis masters, it's a lot more flexible since you don't need to get involved with research. Take applications even if you're in your second semester of your senior year right now. I sent out an email to all the graduating students saying you could still do it. So you can apply in your junior year, or we can take it into your first or second semester of senior year. Just the sooner the better, so you understand the requirements and have time to take those technical electives at the graduate level. If you've already taken them all and you're just learning about this now, we can still try to use, we can use 2 of your 5,000 level technical electives because those are considered graduate level in other departments. So we can like enable them to work for you. After you fill out that pre-screening application, you'll set up a meeting with me just to make sure you understand the requirements and go over the next steps again. And they'll have you fill out that program declaration form just to track you more easily, since it's a little bit hard to track BSMS students. And then you'll have the same deadlines for applying to the graduate school as the thesis. All students apply to the graduate school their last semester of their undergrad program. But those fall or spring deadlines, which are semi-flexible. So if you don't decide until after April 1st, we can still probably admit you into the summer. And then I already have that declaration form. For the pre-screening requirements that we're looking for, you may have heard we recently lowered the GPA requirement from a 3.5 to a 3.0, which is why we're trying to push this even more, that more students are eligible. If you're below 3.0 but you have a high transfer GPA, we can also look at that. And you'll fill out that pre-screening application, meet with me, I'll check your GPA, and if you've taken the GRE, we'll look at that. Otherwise, if it's optional this semester you're applying, we won't consider it. Or you can take it, and if you get 8th percentile, we'll accept that as well. You won't need any letters for this application until you're going to apply to the actual graduate school that has a 3-letter requirement. However, if you want to do a Thesis Masters, we would like you to put the name of one faculty member who you hope to work with as your faculty advisor that we can informally contact for a recommendation to this program and make sure that they'd be okay supervising an undergraduate student before they become a graduate student. So preferably you would have kind of talked to that person already a little bit about this. As long as you meet these requirements, you're free to proceed, contingent being admitted to the graduate school. There's really no other steps, which is kind of in. And like I said, you'll apply during your second semester of senior year. GRE scores if required, 3 letters of recommendation. You put in their email address and they get an automatic notification right away. So you want to make sure you've asked them in advance to make sure they're okay with it and they don't just suddenly get an email out of the blue. There's a 1-page personal statement where you'll just talk about kind of your background and experience and your future career goals. And if doing a thesis, you could also talk about research goals or future academic goals if you plan a PhD or something like that. An updated resume, which you can work with the writing or the career services office on. And then a writing sample is optional if you happen to have one for maybe a class that required a paper and you want to do a thesis, a master's. It might be good for them to see that you're a good writer. Otherwise, you don't need to submit that part. And then here's the deadlines again. For international students, it's a January 1 deadline just because it takes a little bit longer to do visa immigration type processing. But you have a slide later, and the process is a little bit different for international. The master's is really flexible as far as what classes you can take. We just require that you have at least half of your credits in mechanical engineering, so starting with MEEN prefix. And then we kind of like you to focus in one of these 4 areas, which is how we divide up our faculty and our research. But it is flexible, so if there's a lot of crossover within these subfields as well. So say you were kind of doing aerospace, that would be a lot with the thermal fluids and energy systems, as well as solid mechanics and some controls. So there's a lot of leeway there. And then up to half your credits or less could be outside the department in math, science, or engineering. Or sometimes students have been able to petition other classes in like the medical school or the business school, or just if it's related to your career goals and it seems advanced enough to be a graduate course, then it's typically accepted. There aren't any formal emphases. There's some informal tracks, a robotics track, and a design and manufacturing track, and they kind of specify what classes they prefer you to take. But it's not required to do one of those tracks, and they don't appear on your degree. You'll just have a Master of Science, Mechanical Engineering. You might be wondering what financial support is available. So as an undergrad, you're not eligible for typical grad student research assistantships or teaching assistantships because those can only be awarded to graduate students, but there's the UROP program, which you can apply to, that pays you to be involved in research in a lab. You just submit a proposal signed by a faculty advisor. Faculty may have undergraduate paid research opportunities. You're welcome to ask them directly. And then you might be able to find an hourly graded position or just be paid like maybe $10 to $12 an hour. Maybe you got an A in statics and you know the statics professor and they just needed a little extra help grading. Maybe they'd be willing to hire you. And then once you become a graduate student, so that last year, that extra year, you can apply to be a teaching assistant if you're a non-thesis masters. And then if you're a thesis master's, your faculty advisor may already be offering you a research assistantship paid opportunity. There's also greater positions. And the graduate school at the university has a program called Tuition Benefit Program. So if you are offered a 20-hour-a-week TA or RA or greater job, typically it will cover full tuition with that tuition benefit, plus a semester-long stipend that's paid out once a month, I believe. And then if you were offered a 10-hour position, then it would be kind of half tuition, half stipend. So there's information on the graduate school website if you Google University of Utah Tuition Benefit Program. I can send out the link for that as well. It's a pretty good deal. The application for TA jobs are not available until the summer because we need our undergrads to have registered for classes and know how many labs we're going to have. And those jobs would be typically in our lab classes like ME 1000, 1010, mechatronics, TFES lab, and mechanics and materials lab. So I've heard they kind of like to have students that have gone through our program for those jobs because they know the experiments and projects that are going to be done. You might have a decent chance of getting one of those, especially if you know the professor, since they're typically the ones hiring. And then for spring, there's less of those, but the application will go out at the end of fall after registration started. And there would also be TA positions available in the spring. Not so much in the summer, but we sometimes hire graders for our larger classes. There's federal financial aid, but it's a little bit different than for undergrads. So if you're receiving financial aid based on a FAFSA, there are some of those options still available. They're just not the subsidized loans, but you may still be eligible for a Pell Grant, subsidized or non-subsidized loans. There's some grad student specific loans through the government. And then you could potentially get work study, but that does require you to work in a lab, but then that might be enticing for a faculty to hire you if you already had a work study award from financial aid. And then the undergrad scholarships you received typically do not continue through a master's program because those were for undergraduate bachelor's degrees. The scholarship application for the college may have a couple of grad student scholarships, but not too many there. And then mention the loans. The College of Engineering also has some low or deferred interest loans, which can apply to you as well as an undergrad if you're out of financial aid eligibility and have trouble paying for your last semester or two. You should look into that. It's on our financial aid page on our website and the College of Engineering page. And it's a good option because it's not based on how many credits you've taken or anything like that. And there's also some federal fellowships you can look into, especially if you're doing research from some of those national institutes. I kind of mentioned that, but that's what's available through FAFSA for graduate students. I'll Google FAFSA for graduate students. And then just be aware that your undergrad degree audit will look incomplete until your last semester of your master's program, which is when we waive the 2 technical electives that you're going to take at the graduate level. They don't automatically fill in because they're not undergraduate courses. And we want to make sure that you're going to complete the actual MS program before waiving them. Otherwise, you could graduate with a bachelor's with not enough requirements. And then one thing to know also is if you happen to have space your senior year, because you only have maybe senior design and like a tech elective or 2 left, one thing that you could do is take 2 other graduate courses, so extra, and then you'd have 4 total completed before the beginning of your master's degree. And it'll actually cost you a little bit less because undergrad tuition is cheaper than graduate tuition, which I'll show you in a minute. So some tips to prepare, I would recommend getting to know some faculty so you can ask them for letters of recommendation. You can do that by going to office hours and asking questions or make an appointment to discuss their research or get involved with their research, just so they know you a little bit better than that you got an A in their class or whatever. And spend some actual time on your resume and personal statement and maybe have someone review it over in the Career Center or the Writing Center. It's not like a huge factor in your admission, but it looks good if you have put some thought into it. And then a lot of students ask me about costs. I posted this extra slide. On the right is your in-state undergraduate tuition for 12 credits with fees is around $4,100, plus differential tuition for engineering credits. If you're taking graduate courses while you're still an undergrad, it's going to be that same tuition, but with $84 differential tuition instead of $59. But that's still cheaper than if you were classified as a graduate student, and it goes up to $5,800 for 12 credits plus $84 differential tuition. So it is more expensive to complete a master's degree per credit, but this cost is a lot less than a lot of grad programs. For example, an MBA is likely to run you $30,000 at least, possibly per year. Those are usually very expensive, as well as some online only programs to charge way more tuition than a normal graduate tuition for in-state. And then out-of-state would be similar, it would be higher than in-state, but a little bit more for grad tuition versus undergrad. And I mentioned international students were a little bit different, and we've had some trouble since we don't award you a bachelor's degree. Students on a visa need to be turned into a graduate student differently as far as, I think they apply for a different type of visa. They typically need a BS degree awarded to switch over. So we've had to do something tricky, like waiving the tech electives, but having you graduate instead of just continuing on and getting both degrees later. So if you're an international student, make sure you check with us early, especially Dr. Feldberg knows a lot more about that. And the International Student Office has now seen a few of these cases. So they're a little bit better at it now than when we first had this situation. But we can make it work as long as you have more than 122 credits, and we can try to figure something out on that. Any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat. I'm sure I can see the chat.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was talking about this grad program last semester with Professor Liang, and I just kind of got a little confused. He seemed to say that the way that it works is you got your thesis, you have the thesis graduate program where, yeah, you do your research, you get your thesis at the end, and then you go and defend it. And so, yeah, you talk about your research. But he also said, I don't know if I misheard him, that at the end of the master's program, if you don't do a thesis, you have to take an exam to finish. Is that true?
Yeah, so I was confused on that because it was on our website still, but apparently no one had really updated our graduate pages in quite some time. They actually voted to remove the comprehensive exam requirement a couple of years ago, I believe. So I updated the slideshow today, and I had that on there because it was on the website, but then Dr. Feldberg joined me last time and told me that no, there is no exam. So you're just literally going to do 30 credits of classes, apply for graduation, and you're done.
Okay, and then what's the grades required for?
Oh yeah, good point. I should add that. So if you're going to take grad classes as an undergrad, you're basically transferring the classes to a grad degree, so you need a B minimum grade. But if you're in the graduate program and now a graduate student, it's a B minus minimum, but a B average. So you need a 3.0 in the masters to get the masters, and then no lower than a B minus, and at least if you get some B minuses, you'll need some B pluses to get that average. So a little bit higher, but since we have a 3.0 minimum, we're assuming you can achieve that.
Okay, and then what about is the retake format, if you, let's say you get like a C+ or something, do you get booted from the program, or do you have a retaking kind of like undergrad?
Yeah, they're a little bit stricter, but there's kind of like a probation kind of situation with GPA minimum and grade minimum. So you're not immediately booted, but they give you less chances per se.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? If you know for sure you're interested, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about non-thesis masters, just because I didn't totally clear. But for the GRE, like say, so I'm a junior semester right now, should I just plan on taking the GRE before doing the pre-screening? Because I noticed that like your GRE scores are part of it.
No, you don't have to, because I'm really not sure what direction they're going to go. I think I could, yeah, I hope to convince them to waive it this year, because there's a lot of equity issues, particularly with international students that don't have strong internet access, and it was often offered only online, and some states or some countries or some areas it was not offered online, and then if you had to take it online, maybe you didn't have a good internet connection. So just to make it more equitable is one of the main reasons we went this way. But also schools are deciding that exams are not good predictors of success. So if our faculty decide that it's not the best predictor of success, it may remain optional. Like I think some faculty really want it there as one factor of considering a student, especially for PhD and thesis that they'll be working closely with. But there's a decent chance it stays optional. So you can wait, since you don't really need it officially until you're applying to the actual graduate school, if we decide to require it by the time you're applying. But but if you think you might apply to other programs that will require it, you can take it. And these scores for good for 5 years. Some schools it might be 3 years. So you can take it or wait, but I kind of would say wait. My suggestion.
Okay, cool. But so then I could still fill out the pre-screening form without taking it then, basically.
Yeah, it asks for self-reported scores, just like leave it blank or put something. I just will ignore it. Or I'll change it to be like, not taking because it's optional, or don't know yet. But yeah, you can fill it out and meet with me without having the GRE exam. Any other questions? So what I was about to say before is if you know you want to do this, go ahead and fill out the pre-screening form. I review it based on your GPA at that moment. So if you're a little low and worried, like you can wait and I'll look again next time. If you're a senior, you should do it right away. If you're a first semester senior, you can wait a little bit longer, but if you're a senior graduating, definitely do it right away. So we can figure everything out for you. If you're a junior, if you just want information, you can meet with me. If you're sure you want to do it, I can screen you now, or you can wait. If you want to do a thesis, I would recommend applying now, and we can discuss finding faculty advisor and things like that. Any last questions? If not, I'll send this PowerPoint out with some links and the recording, and I'll post it all in Canvas as well. And feel free to email me, joy.velarde@utah.edu. Pretty quick on email. And thanks for coming.